And just before we get into it all, we'll do the quick medical disclaimer, which is just saying that everything that we're sharing today, all about lab testing and other things with PCOS, is all for educational purposes. And if you have any questions, you can bring them to your naturopath, us, or your medical doctor before implementing anything. And yeah, like Dr. Laura said, we're so excited. I mean, this is day 3. We've had so much fun putting this content together, sharing all this information on PCOS. So we are excited to dive into day 3.
So I'm going to give us a quick recap of yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with my words today. Quick recap from yesterday: nutrition and diet for PCOS. So some of the things we covered are some more kind of trendy or fad diets, such as keto, paleo, or intermittent fasting. We went over why those aren't our favorites. We don't love super restrictive diets because they're not sustainable, right? And we don't want a diet that you can follow for 4 weeks. We want a diet that you can follow for the next 40 years, right? And so we're more of a whole foods diet. The dairy debate, whether or not you need to exclude it, really depends on if it triggers your acne. And so if you're not finding it's making a difference in your skin changes and you're able to tolerate it, you don't have any digestive upset, then hey, go ahead, eat the dairy. It's a great source of protein. No need to eliminate it unless we see any medical reason for doing it. And then goal setting for exercise. So finding something that you enjoy, being specific about it, measurable, maybe having a friend join up with you so that it stays realistic and relevant and you have someone to be accountable to. And then time, right? Schedule it in and make it a priority for your health.
Okay, so then this is what we are covering today. We are going to be covering lab testing for PCOS. So the key tests that you need to have done to understand your PCOS subtype and just understand your PCOS more specifically. We're going to really dive into the understanding of lab values and the difference between fine versus optimal, which is a huge thing for us. And then we're also really excited to share with you the PCOS 3-month hormone harmony program that we have created in order to bring all of this together for you.
Yay. All right. So, you know, what blood work have you had done? And often Dr. Kier and I hear this all the time. Again, maybe we can think back to our patient Jane, who's like, I've tried everything. And then they tell us, you know, I went to my family doctor, they ran all my blood work and everything was fine. And then we look through and we go, well, you know what, they ran the basics. Some of it is fine and not optimal, and they aren't being comprehensive. And so that's when we want to look at more thorough testing so that we're testing, not guessing when it comes to your health. And so some of the key tests that we're going to cover are vitamin D. We're going to cover why we want to run fasting glucose and fasting insulin. We're going to talk about your LH to FSH ratio and why it's important to calculate that. Testosterone and DHEA and how we can interpret these tests. And then also a little bit of testing to rule out PCOS. So sometimes there's other conditions that can look like PCOS, but they're actually not. An example is prolactin. When prolactin is really high, that can cause you to lose your period and have amenorrhea. So maybe you don't have PCOS, maybe we just need to test your prolactin. We also want to always look at thyroid function because some symptoms of hypothyroidism can mimic PCOS. And then we want to run something called 17-hydroxyprogesterone. And this is a more specific test. I'm not getting into the details because it's super complex. But this is ruling out a condition called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which again can mimic PCOS. So we always just want to make sure that we're assessing you thoroughly and ruling out other potential conditions before we know for sure that PCOS is what you are being diagnosed with.
Yeah, and I think that point is so important too, because that's a huge part of our beginning work with patients is actually just making sure that we have the correct diagnosis. And sometimes patients will come to us and they will have had some workup done, and so we're pretty certain that's what it is, but we do need to make sure that because we talked about it's a syndrome, so it kind of can look different, it present differently in different people, that we just want to make sure that what we are treating is PCOS so that we actually get results that we want.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so vitamin D. Now, this is probably our most tested like blood work marker, I would say, like one of the most important blood worker markers that we have across for basically all patients, but specifically for PCOS too. And we'll chat about why in just a minute. So although it's classified as a vitamin, vitamin D actually acts more like a hormone inside our body. So it really impacts so many different kind of body systems and organ systems and hormones within our body. It regulates several important metabolic and reproductive functions in the body. And then, I mean, vitamin D deficiency is really, really common. We see it all the time when we run blood work. We know that from like population-based studies as well, especially in North America, where we don't get tons of sun all through the year. It's very common, but we also see it more commonly in PCOS as well. And then supplementation of vitamin D has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and lower testosterone levels. It's also been shown to improve follicular development, so those like growing of the follicles, and cycle regularity, so regular ovulation. We also see an improvement with vitamin D sufficiency in mood. And because hormones play such a big role in all aspects of our body, and going back to on day one when we were kind of going through all the symptoms of PCOS, we also showed low mood and depression as a symptom. So we do see that a higher incidence of that in women with PCOS. So vitamin D can definitely help with mood. And then here also, vitamin D status is a strong predictor of live birth rate. So when we're talking about fertility with PCOS, vitamin D sufficiency becomes really, really important. So now this is where the big conversation is about fine versus optimal when it comes to the blood work. So our most reference ranges, sometimes they vary a bit by lab, but in Canada, the units are about the range of about 75 to 250 nanomoles per liter. So if you're under 75, then you are deficient in vitamin D. But we really want to look at an optimal range to see these benefits. So really, we want you to be above about 110 nanomoles per liter, maybe 110, 120, 130, somewhere around there. So that's really what we're aiming for. And in this case, why running vitamin D is so important is because we need to dose you appropriately to get to that optimal range. And vitamin D is actually a nutrient that you can take too much of because it's fat soluble, it hangs around in the body. You know, it's not like taking vitamin B12 or vitamin C that's water soluble, will flush out if you don't need it. It does hang around. So you can safely take kind of like the Health Canada guideline amounts of vitamin D, but that might not get you to the optimal level. But we need to make sure that we know what your serum level is in order to dose you appropriately so that we can get you to that optimal level to make sure that you're not vitamin D deficient.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I don't know about you, Dr. Kier, but I was just thinking about as you were chatting, I've probably run vitamin D like 10 times in the past month. And I think one person was sufficient and that their levels were like 78. So just above 75. Everyone else was in like the 50s. Sometimes I see people in the 30s, and especially with COVID and people not leaving their house. We can't just say, oh, take 1,000 IUs. You're not going to get to sufficiency, let alone optimal over that 110. And that's why we have to test.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is exactly the same. The only time I see them at really decent levels is when someone has been like under the guidance of someone and supplementing a higher amount. But again, we don't recommend that. We recommend doing the blood work and then working with a naturopath or your doctor to make sure that you're taking the right amount to get you to that level. Okay, moving on.
All right, fasting, glucose, and insulin. I picked this photo because we were working on the slides when it was Halloween, and now it made me think of all the Halloween candy. But I want to talk about fasting insulin and fasting glucose. And this is a huge pet peeve of mine, where again, people go, well, I've had my glucose level checked. I've had my blood sugars checked. My doctor tell me they're fine. Or I send them back to their family doctor to do blood work, and the family doctor's like, oh yeah, we checked insulin. No, they checked fasting glucose. And here's the thing is that it's high levels of insulin, not glucose, that causes a lot of the unwanted symptoms of PCOS. So as we've been talking about earlier this week, so insulin is a hormone produced in our pancreas, and it's important for getting sugar into our blood cells. So it takes sugar out of our bloodstream and into our cells. And when we have insulin resistance, it's almost like you can think of your cells as a garage door, and insulin is the garage door opener, and you keep clicking it, but it's not listening. So you click it more, and your body builds up resistance and doesn't respond to insulin as well. And then these high levels of insulin, they increase testosterone production from our ovaries, can make you feel pretty crummy, can make you feel tired and sluggish. And so now you have more acne, you don't feel well, you don't want to move your body. And then every time you eat, you're on this blood sugar roller coaster because you can't effectively take that sugar out of your bloodstream and put it into your cells. And so this is why we need to test insulin and glucose. And most family doctors only test glucose. So again, difficulty losing weight, your hair's falling out, you have acne, you have sugar cravings, you're tired all the time. All of these can go back to insulin resistance. And how we measure insulin resistance is something called the HOMA-IR score. And to calculate our HOMA-IR score, we need to have both fasting insulin and fasting glucose levels. And so this is something I'm often sending patients to the lab first thing in the morning to get done. And what I really want to see is for HOMA-IR scores to be under 1.9. And ideally to get to there, we need fasting insulin to be less than 50. And many times when I'm running this in patients with PCOS, it's well over 100, sometimes in the 150 range. And so we know then that they have poor glycemic control. And this is probably at the root cause of a lot of their symptoms. And we need to look at diet, exercise, supplements, and lifestyle to help bring those fasting insulin levels down. And absolutely, I have seen changes after a few months of a really good treatment plan where we're able to get that fasting insulin down to optimal levels. So for me, this is a really big one, something that I run quite a bit. And I find very important that we have a better understanding of a patient's insulin control and not just their glucose levels. So hopefully that's clear. I know this one gets very confusing, but I find this one to be so important. And that's why I'm usually testing both of these together in patients so I can measure their actual level of insulin resistance and then retesting in kind of 3 to 4 months to look for those changes and show, wow, not only do you feel better and have more energy, the proof is in the pudding. We see this in your blood work as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I have the exact same experience with this one. This is something that I don't think I've ever had a patient come to me and have both fasting insulin and fasting glucose run. Some of the other ones that we're going over today, like your medical doctor, it might be something that you kind of run routinely, and the glucose, yes, but the insulin, like almost never. It can be really hard to get this one run, but we run it. Like it's just so important to monitor, and it's crazy how out of range like the insulin levels I see are. And then exactly like Dr. Laura said, there definitely are ways of like some nutrition changes and lifestyle changes, and then certain supplements that can really help us move the needle on this. And the way I always explain it is like the fasting glucose that your doctor is running, it's really monitoring you for diabetes, right? So it's like they're looking for it to be under 6. When it's over 6, then we're kind of in that pre-diabetes and the diabetes range. And this, like when we're assessing for insulin resistance, this is a way more sensitive test to just test, is there some like insulin resistance happening at a cellular level that could be like, it's like we're not at the diabetes stage, and we like it's potential that you're going there, but like decades and decades and decades later. So that's why we want to get ahead of it. So that's how I explain, like, it's just so important to get these markers.
And I will say just quickly, with insulin then, a lot of times PCOS gets treated with a diabetes drug, metformin, right? Because again, it is more of that metabolic syndrome. And I have nothing against metformin. I find just a lot of patients don't tolerate it really well. It causes a lot of abdominal discomfort, a lot of bloating, gas, abdominal pain, diarrhea. And so often patients just end up not taking it because they feel even worse on it. And so we definitely have some natural options instead that I try to start with that tend to have less side effects. And that way you can actually feel good making these changes.
Yeah. And it's always an integrated, like individual approach. So sometimes those medications are definitely the right things for you to do. But also working with someone who's kind of bringing in some of these other approaches to see if we can get the change with the insulin there. Can we mitigate side effects by using something else? And just kind of answering those questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is the LH to FSH ratio. So these hormones, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, are both produced in the pituitary gland in the brain. So these hormones are produced in the brain. They're then sending signals to the ovary. So the FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone, is going to stimulate the growth of the ovarian follicles in the first half of the cycle. And then around mid-cycle, depending on how long your cycle is, the luteinizing hormone is going to surge, and that's what's actually going to trigger ovulation. So in PCOS, often what we see, before PCOS, so normally this ratio should kind of be about a 1-to-1 LH to FSH. In PCOS, we tend to see a higher ratio of the luteinizing hormone to FSH. So it can be as high as 3-to-1, as we put there in the notes. And that's because the body is like trying to ovulate. So it's like that, those LH levels are persistently high. We test these hormones typically around day 3 is when we're going to test them to get like a good kind of range of where they are, since they do fluctuate through the cycle. So we're going to test those on about day 3. And it's also important to note that this test isn't diagnostic of PCOS. So even if your levels are normal, like you do have that closer to 1-to-1 ratio, it doesn't mean that you don't have PCOS, but it does give us kind of an indication of what's happening in your particular picture. And then also going back to what Dr. Laura said about making sure that what we're treating is PCOS, this test can also be a bit helpful in terms of ruling out some other causes of irregular cycles. So as an example, hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is like you're not ovulating because of that brain communication, so the LH and FSH communication with the ovary. So in that condition, we'll see those levels really, really, really low. Or more of a premature ovarian insufficiency situation where you're not ovulating because actually the FSH level is really, really high. So that's impeding ovulation. So it's just helpful from that perspective as well to kind of rule out other conditions. And yeah, like I said, we would test this around day 3, and then that's kind of what we're looking for there.
And yeah, Dr. Carey, you bring up such a good point on testing on day 3. Back to my slight pet peeve and rant again here is when patients come in and they say, I've had all my blood work done. And I'm like, oh, what day of your cycle did you have it on? They're like, I don't know. They just gave me the rec and I went to the lab. And it's like, well, that's not very helpful because certain things like vitamin D, we can test anytime. But if we're looking at hormones, there is specific times in the cycle we need to test these things. And I find that often patients are not educated about that. And we really take the time to understand why you need to go to the lab on a certain day to get accurate results.
Yeah, it makes such a difference for the LH, FSH, if we're running estrogen or progesterone, like all of those do need to be done on certain days. And that's something that I always kind of explain as well in the sense of a lot of the times patients will get the feedback that running these hormones isn't helpful because they change so much through the month. And that is very true, but if we're testing them on a certain day and we're looking for something specific, then it can be very helpful, right? So like a day 3 FSH, LH is going to give us some information. Even a day 3 estrogen, estradiol, like it does give us a bit of an information. Yes, it's going to fluctuate so much through the cycle, but at least giving us an understanding of what's happening on day 3 in relation to the other hormones is helpful, but it's just all about the day that you're doing it. Okay, so moving on to testosterone.
Perfect. Testosterone. So testosterone levels, as we said, are often abnormally high in PCOS. And I'll say often, and that similar to that LH-FSH, you don't have to have high levels of testosterone to have PCOS. I certainly have lots of patients with normal levels of testosterone, but in general, they tend to be higher. And this can lead to unwanted symptoms such as that male pattern baldness or cystic acne. So often patients will complain of, hair on their chin, but then hair loss here, kind of where you see that male pattern baldness or at the back, and really deep cystic acne, especially along the jawline.
You freeze
tends to be more hormonal. And this is something so that we can look at, hopefully I'm there, where we can run different forms of testosterone to get our free androgen index, for instance. And so testosterone, again, maybe patients go, I had my testosterone checked and it was fine, it was normal. Maybe we want to look at your free testosterone. So free meaning it's actually free to go around the body and cause these unwanted symptoms. It's in a more available form. Sometimes DHT, which is super testosterone, even stronger than testosterone and binds really strongly. So testosterone might be normal, but DHT is not. And so if we're really trying to understand what's going on with symptoms, then we're not just running total testosterone. We might need to look at free, bioavailable, or DHT. So this just shows you how comprehensive lab testing can really help explain your symptoms. Similar to testosterone, sometimes I'll run DHEA, which tends to be also abnormally high in patients with PCOS. And DHEA is sort of like our mother of all hormones. And although it can turn into a lot of different hormones, in PCOS, it tends to get kind of shunted towards the testosterone pathway. And so if we see DHEA being really high, that's something that we can work on as well to try and bring those levels down with certain supplements. And so, as I said multiple times, high insulin, people are like, well, where's this testosterone coming from? Our ovaries in women can produce testosterone, and this high insulin tends to kind of drive that testosterone production. And when we have too much testosterone, this can further inhibit ovulation and cause irregular cycles. So all of these things are kind of interplaying together, but certainly if we're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together and really understand what's going on for you, we might want to run more of a testosterone panel to be more thorough and really understand where different pathways are being pushed in your body.
Yeah, and I'll say that that's typically I do see not all of those androgens run. I'm sorry, I think you froze there. I don't typically see all of the androgens run. Like I might just see like total testosterone. So that's where we're looking at like total, free, potentially DHT and DHEA. Because going back to the subtypes of PCOS that we covered on day one, in that adrenal picture, we're often seeing the DHEA elevated because that's produced from the adrenal glands and then filters down, like Dr. Laura said, to the other hormones. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention too is I think a lot of people, and we did cover this on day one in the whole like hormone map, that a lot of women don't realize that they do make testosterone in their ovaries, and the testosterone in their ovaries are made in the theca cells, and then they actually move over to the granulosa cells to then produce estrogen. So that's where the estrogen is coming from. So that process is there. It's just in PCOS with those high insulin levels, it's just increasing the testosterone production more than it should be, and then inhibiting ovulation. Okay, so let us know if you guys have any questions about the blood work. So now we're really, really excited to share about our 3-month program. So this is something that we have created for everyone who takes part in this masterclass or who watches the recordings. And really, we wanted to create a way of working with us that's going to give us enough time to actually set the foundations of health so that we can actually see changes. So we kind of created this 3-month program so that we can really work with you towards your goals, whether that's more regular ovulation and periods, or clearer skin and clearing up acne and any weight loss goals that you might have, kind of working towards all of those. Because a big thing with us that we're always kind of educating patients on in terms of naturopathic medicine is it does take a little bit longer to see changes, because we're trying to set really healthy habits and put good things, kind of practices in place. And then when we bring in like the nutraceuticals and the vitamins and minerals that, we're very evidence-based in terms of what we're recommending, that it is a bit of a more natural approach. So it can be, sometimes we make changes that like you notice a difference immediately, but we do have to give things time to actually see the results. So that's why we're really excited about creating this 3-month program. So yeah, Dr. Laura, why don't you tell us what's involved in it?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, we're so excited. This is something we've been working on for a long time and really put a lot of thought into how can we create a program that's going to help you have the best results. And so we've broken it down month by month. We have our initial onboarding consultation, which is anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes. And that's when we put together your personalized PCOS blueprint. And that's going to be your 3-month action plan that will specifically address your health goals. So we'll know then at the end of the 3 months, I always say to patients, what do you want your health to look like in 3 months from now? And so we'll put that blueprint together, knowing what our health goals are in mind at the end of our program. So we're going to have that initial assessment. We can do a complete hormone assessment as an add-on package to that. We provide ongoing email support to anyone who's in our program. This is exclusive to the PCOS program. Typically, this is an extra charge, but we want to offer it to make sure that you feel supported should you have any questions. We also are going to do personalized nutrition, putting together recipe booklets specifically for you that are geared towards PCOS with lots of delicious recipes. And I know we put a few samplers already in the Facebook group, so make sure you try those. And then we're going to always have a momentum coaching call. So every month after that, we're going to have a 60-minute follow-up where we can really fine-tune your treatment plan, maybe review some blood work. But we're also going to have that 15-minute check-in as a coaching call, because we know that having that accountability to us is going to help you achieve your health goals. We've also included a monthly group meeting. We see now more and more the research supports how important group mindset can be for healthcare and health goals, and having that sense of a group and working together with other women in the program can really bring your health to the next level. So this is something that's new that we're really looking forward to, so that we can sit down virtually as a group and have an education meeting where you can ask your questions and we can go through things together. On top of this, this whole program can be done virtually for anyone who's in Ontario. But if you live in Toronto, we have some great add-ons as well. So we're going to be doing some acupuncture and IV therapy add-ons at a package rate. So these discounts will be exclusive to anyone in the program. And we're also going to allow unlimited use of our red light therapy, which is my personal favorite thing right now with the weather getting cold, and also one of my favorite treatments for acne. It's a little bit of, sort of my secret sauce for helping treat acne, and some really good research coming out on that as well. And so these are things, if you're coming in for your appointment, you can come use our red light. We can add on an acupuncture or an IV vitamin therapy, and all of this will be broken down for you each month as part of our 3-month program. And we know that we need these 3 months to actually see results, to see those changes in your blood work, to see those changes in your skin and ovulation. So we are committed to you, and we hope that you can help commit with us and stick with us in the program to finally get rid of those unwanted PCOS symptoms.
Yeah, and again, like Dr. Laura said, we put it together specifically to make sure that you guys have the support to really see those changes, because the data actually does show that even with PCOS specifically and kind of integrating the changes, the more checkpoints we have, the actual better the results. And it's so important because with all of us, like, things are going to happen, we're going to, like, just as like life happens, and there's holidays next season and things like that, but it's working together and kind of like troubleshooting things that you are having trouble with, or fine-tuning the results based on blood work and things like that, or the plan, I should say, based on blood work. So we're super excited about how we've kind of set it up with all the consultations and the coaching calls to keep us in line and make sure that we're on the right track with everything. And then what else did I want to say? I wanted to echo the red light therapy for acne, because it is excellent for that. So yes, if you're local to our clinic here in Toronto, then you can access that red light therapy. And then acupuncture too. Both Dr. Laura and I use a lot of acupuncture for PCOS hormone stuff. It's really great for regulating ovulation, improving blood flow, and a bunch of other benefits too. Okay, so yeah, so this is the 3-month PCOS program. So we were able to kind of bring things together and provide a discounted rate for anyone who's attending the masterclass or who's watching it after. So everything that we put into it, really it's valued at over $1,600, but we really want to make it accessible for you. So we have put the rate at $279 a month. So the 3-month program, it's $279 a month. You don't need to pay upfront. It's just kind of as you go, as we move through the 3 months, you will be billed that way. So yeah, and then, Dr. Laura, you can let people know how they can book, right?
Yes, so there's a couple ways. We will be sending, for all of you who signed up, we will be sending out more information in an email in terms of what is the breakdown of the program and how to book. If you're interested in learning more and want to talk to us directly, You can also go to our website, higherhealthcenter.com, and there's a link there to book a 15-minute discovery phone call. So if you're like, you know what, this sounds really great, I'm still not sure if it's the right program for me, book that complimentary discovery phone call, and we can kind of chat with you further and see what is the best course of action. But absolutely, this is going to be open for a limited number of spots. So watch your inbox. We will be sending out an email breaking down the entire program, as well as this highly discounted one-time offer for all of you. And that's so you'll have a chance to book your spot and get started working with us on your health.
Yeah, so we're so excited. Thank you so much for joining us over the last 3 days. We hope that you learned something with this content. Hopefully it sparked some inspiration within you. And again, we will be, look for the email, like Dr. Laura said, we'll be sending it out, and then there will be a link to kind of book a call with us so that if you want to find out more about the program there.
And yeah, and if you're ready to get started today, head over to our website, higherhealthcenter.com, and you can book your discovery phone call. But in terms of the program, stay tuned with your inbox. We can't wait to hear from you. If you're watching this recording later, make sure you jump on our Facebook group and you can post any questions you have there, and we'll be monitoring as well and making sure that we answer them for you.
Yeah, exactly. We're still active on that Facebook group, so that's where this recording will be posted. And then if you have any questions there, just pop them in and then we'll be happy to answer.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us these past few days. We had so much fun with all of you. We loved all of your support and engagement, and we'll look forward to working with you.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.